Once upon a time, I wanted to become an anime translator, so I focused, worked hard every day, and became an anime translator, and I lived happily ever after. The end.
Oh, if only it were that simple. Hello, person who clicked on this video who maybe wants to be motivated. I am Sarah, and I am a full-time freelance Japanese to English anime and game translator. That is a mouthful. I have been full-time freelancing, making my way in this world, just kind of making up my job as I go along for almost 20 years now. Next year it will have been 20 years being a full-time freelancer and somehow staying afloat, not going into debt, and for the most part, pursuing my dreams. And you'll find so many blogs and videos on YouTube talking about how to be productive, how to stay motivated, how to make your dreams come true, how to get your stuff done. And all these videos and blogs do have good, solid advice, but I find that a lot of them are a little too one size fit all. And as somebody who has had to motivate herself pretty much to do everything my entire life, I've never really had a job where everything was handed to me and I knew exactly what to do with it and I just did it and put in my time, get my paycheck, the end. As a freelancer, you're constantly needing to self-motivate. You have these giant deadlines that are way in the future and you have to, ration your time properly, otherwise you're screwed when the project is due. So I do know quite a few things about how to stay on task, how to stay productive, and how to self-motivate. And over the years, I have learned that this one-size-fit-all advice doesn't necessarily work for everybody, because not only is everybody different and everyone is facing different challenges, different reasons why you're not motivated or why you're having a hard time being productive in your projects, but even me as a person, as an individual, I find that, throughout the year, I might be facing one kind of challenge for a few months, and then I might be facing a different kind of challenge for a few months that is preventing me from being motivated. So you can't always just use, okay, I'm going to use this one technique, this magic, I'm going to use pomodoro technique, cures all, and I'll just use that technique and everything will be fine. Maybe that works for a few people out there, you lucky bastards. But for the rest of us, we have to mix things up and recognize, get really introspective with what exactly is the root cause of our lack of motivation and production, and that way we can apply the antidote. So I'm going to give you guys the struggles that I have faced throughout my almost 2 years of being a freelancer, and I'm going to give you guys my techniques that I've discovered work really well for combating these problems. And I'm going to give you my own experiences as context, okay? I recognize that most of you watching this video are not Japanese to English freelance anime and game translators, but these techniques can apply to students, they can apply to other freelancers, they can apply to people that have passions and goals that they are trying to achieve. So first, I have divided into a few subcategories the challenges or the problems that prevent me from being motivated. Number 1 is a stressed brain. Number 2 is a busy brain. Number 3 is a lack of confidence. Number 4 is feeling too relaxed to work while at home. Number 5 is hating the particular task that you're trying to get done. Number 6 is poor physical health. Number 7 is poor mental health. And number 8 is the realization that you actually don't want to achieve this goal. I have timestamps in the video description for my breaking down of all of these challenges. So if one sounds a little more like it's you than the others, or if you want to come back to this video later and what did she say about a busy brain? This is what I'm feeling today. You can refer to the timestamps. So for the first challenge of having a stressed out brain, this results when you either actually have just a lot of stuff on your plate, a lot of stuff on your very long to-do list that's genuine things that you need to get done. You need to take your cats to the vet, you need to make a dentist appointment for yourself and get your filling taken care of that's falling out because it's a temporary filling. You need to write that paper for one grad school class, you need to do your homework for another grad school class, you need to apply for an internship, you need to apply for a job, you need to cook dinner, eat dinner. These are all legit things that, maybe you actually do genuinely have to do that are on your to-do list. But sometimes these to-do lists can kind of be in our heads, thinking, oh, I have to do this thing. Like I promised my friend I'd watch this movie, or oh, I've been promising this friend that I have to get drinks with her at some point. I've been kind of putting that off and that has to get done. Oh, at some point I really do need to confront this work colleague that I've been meaning to confront about something. These are things that don't necessarily have to get done, but they're things that are just weighing down on your mind. It's like, I have to get these things done. They're cluttering your brain and with stress and making it really difficult for you to focus on the task at hand of translating 20 pages of this game that's due next week. So my first technique for dealing with this is to write out a very detailed plan, not only for your week of what you're going to do every day in that week, but for what you're going to do every single half hour of every single day. And I write everything out in detail. I even schedule things like brushing my teeth and cooking breakfast and eating breakfast and taking out the garbage and vacuuming, and I'll schedule even fun things in there like have a tea break or go on a walk. But the point is I schedule everything right down to the time in which it is done. I don't just make a bullet list of these are all the things I'm going to do today, but I think to myself, okay, how much time exactly will each of these things take? How long am I going to spend on each of these things? And I schedule it exactly from 7:35 a.m. to 7:40 a.m. I'm going to be brushing my teeth and washing my face. And the cool thing about this is it really forces you to focus on the exact task at hand instead of just having this to-do list of a bunch of things to do and you see the long list and you're overwhelmed, like, oh my God, look at all the stuff I have to do today, or oh, look at all the stuff I have to do this week. All you have to do is you look at that schedule. What am I supposed to do right now at 10:15 a.m.? And you'll see the one item and you'll do it. And some of these items on this list, like I said, are not even necessarily horrible things. Some of them are very mundane things, like brushing your teeth. The good thing about putting those things in your schedule as well is that it gives you a sense of accomplishment when you finish something, right? When you get to delete something off your to-do list, or when you get to check it off, you feel like, yay, I've adulted, I've accomplished something, even if it's just something very small like brushing your teeth. If you have that on your schedule and you can check it off, then that gives you a win, and it gives you the motivation to do the next thing, which is translate for an hour. So the second technique that I like to apply, and this is in tandem with the first technique, is I like to schedule myself little 5 to 10 minute exercise breaks. And these exercise breaks, instead of just being vague and random, like, oh, translate one page and then work out for a bit. No, for one, you have to really schedule this set time. Work out for 10 minutes exactly. And then schedule exactly what it is that you're going to do in your workout. Figure that out at the beginning of your week or the beginning of your day, what it is exactly you're going to do, so you don't have decision fatigue thinking, what am I going to do to work out for 10 minutes? And you're spending 2 minutes of that time wondering what you're going to do. No, instead I have these pre-prescribed, predetermined workout routines that I do, so I don't have to think. I just get up and I do it. And also a really good idea for that is to have a playlist of workout songs. They can be by type, but very importantly, by time. So I'd find a bunch of 5-minute songs in the playlist and be like, I'm going to do push-ups and other arm exercises that are pre-prescribed for the duration of 2 songs. So that way it really keeps you on task for the 10 minutes, and then you won't be like, oh, well, since I'm up, I might as well, do this other thing. It's like, no, stick to that schedule. And the benefit of incorporating working out with your day is working out is a good stress relief, and it is also just good for your physical and mental health in general, just to make sure that you're exercising regularly. So 2 birds with 1 stone. The third technique that I use if my brain is just overwhelmed and stressed out with all these things that it has to do, and I'm having a very hard time focusing on this one current task as a result, is I have found that sometimes, okay, this doesn't work for me very well, but it has worked for other people. Sometimes I find that listening either to ambient music, so nothing with lyrics, just something kind of in the background, or a podcast can help focus my brain. It can channel all my thoughts into the ambient music or into that podcast, so that instead of thinking about this chore I have to do, this conversation I have to have, this other job I have to do, this other job I have to do, this unpleasant administrative task I have to do, and the page that I'm translating, instead I can think about the podcast I'm listening to and the thing I'm translating. So now it's only 2 things, and the podcast can really help channel your thoughts into just the one thing and the other thing. Again, like I said, sometimes podcast isn't the best thing for me because, translating really has to use, language and your brain, and a podcast is language. So sometimes those two things don't go well together. I don't know how my dad managed. That's like his default, is listening to talk radio while he translates German to English. And I don't know how he does it, but it works for him. And it definitely I've noticed it definitely slows me down, but it's better to translate like at half speed and actually get it done than to be overwhelmed and not get anything done at all. Ambient music though, yeah, and if you're into ASMR, like ambient sounds, music, sometimes that can really focus your brain so that you can, focus on your one task at hand. My fourth technique, and this is a big one, and I'm sure you've seen this one in the other motivational video lists, is to disable the distracting websites, apps, push notifications on your phone and computer. And I would take that a step further, and if you're not using your computer for your task, move that to a different room. If you're not using your phone for your current task, move your phone to another room. Just eliminating that temptation is a huge thing to do, and yeah, totally do that. Eliminate those distractions. Technique number 5 is two things, sort of. One is intermittent fasting and or meal prepping. So you have heard, I'm sure, of intermittent fasting. It's gaining a lot of momentum on the internet. Everyone's talking about it. Everyone's doing it. I kind of accidentally practice intermittent fasting. I don't usually do it to optimize productivity because I tend to eat between the hours of 9 and 5, which is like the hours also that I work, because I personally like taking my breaks to eat, but you might find that taking breaks to eat kind of really interrupts your rhythm. It does interrupt my rhythm. I've just decided to live with it because eating is a huge pleasure for me. But for people where eating is more of a chore, it might work for you to intermittent fast between the hours of, 9 and 5 when you're working, and then only eat like from 6 to midnight maybe, and then sleep. So that's the way intermittent fasting works, is you only eat for a small window during your day. And what that means is when you're not eating, then you can be extra productive. You don't have to take time out of your day to cook anything or go get food or eat the food. And then food coma is definitely a thing. What I've been trying to do now is eat smaller meals so that I do not experience food coma, because if I eat a huge meal, I have food coma for a good half hour. All the blood is in my stomach instead of in my brain, and it's really hard to work. So intermittent fasting definitely can be a good tool, as can meal prepping or eating leftovers, because if you're like me and you love cooking and eating, sometimes I cook 3 meals a day, and without realizing it, I'm spending an hour and a half a day during my workday cooking. And if I meal prepped, I'd be saving an hour and a half out of my workday. So that is a huge, powerful tool that can help you save time. Technique number 6 to calm the stress is, of course, to make your workspace a more zen, if you will, place to work. I mentioned ambient music earlier, but anything that just pleases your senses. So for your ears, ambient music, for your nose, maybe some flowers or some scented candles. I personally really like incense these days. For your eyes, pleasant art on the walls, maybe some flowers, like I mentioned before. And for your tactile, for touching, maybe like wear silk clothing or have like a nice fuzzy, fluffy blanket on you while you're working. Have something that feels really good. And maybe be sipping a nice, tasty cup of tea while you're working to simulate your tasting. Also, keeping your workspace tidy goes along with this. I have found if there's a pile of dirty dishes in the sink in the kitchen, even if I can't see it from where I work on the couch. I pretty much work on the couch in the living room all the time. I can't see the dirty dishes, but if I know they're there, it stresses me out and it's really hard for me to focus. Just knowing that my kitchen is clean and there's no dirty dishes, it makes me so much calmer and I can work. So yeah, having a clean working environment as well really helps. So the second problem or challenge that I have faced with productivity is, we talked about stressed brain. There's a bunch of all these annoying and terrible things that I have to do and it's stressing me out in my brain. But Sometimes my brain can be full of fun things. Like maybe I have this really fun trip that's coming up. Like before I went to Quebec, I had a hard time focusing because I was thinking, oh man, a week from now I'm going to be in Quebec and I'm going to be eating all the French food. And I was like really excited, and it's kind of hard to focus. Or maybe I was part of what was preventing me from making this video was I was thinking about all the other videos that I had in mind that were even bigger projects that I was more excited about doing than this video. And I was like, oh, but I want to work on this video. Oh, but I want to work on this video. And I have, noisy brain with a bunch of fun things that I want to do. When I had promised my community that I was going to make this video, and at least one of you reached out and was like, oh man, that video is going to be so helpful to me. So I'm like, I can't let them down. I have to make this video and I can't put it off much longer. I have to do it. Not that I didn't want to make this video, it's just wasn't very high on my list of videos that I wanted to make, if I'm being perfectly honest with you guys. So yeah, the underlying problem is just noisy brain with all the other stuff that it would rather be doing that are just so much more exciting than the current task at hand. So my first technique for coping with this is indeed the Pomodoro technique. So if you have not heard of the Pomodoro technique, very simply, you set a kitchen timer, not your phone, because again, your phone has distracting apps on it. So kitchen timer, old school kitchen timer, you set it for, sometimes it's 20 minutes, sometimes it's 25 minutes, sometimes it's 30 minutes, pick your own interval. People have found that between 20 and 30 minutes is optimal. So you set that timer for say 20 minutes, and basically as soon as you set that timer, you work for 20 minutes. And so the thought behind that is, if you have 6 hours of work ahead of you, that's pretty daunting. It's like, oh man, I have to work for 6 hours when I'd rather be like, crocheting or watching Netflix or doing this other fun thing. But if you only have 20 minutes that you have to work, because you set the timer for 20 minutes, if you only have to work for 20 minutes, that's a lot easier. Like, oh man, I only have to work for 20 minutes. And so after that 20 minutes is up, I give myself a little reward. Now this reward, it can't be something very vague like watch a YouTube video, because hey, maybe that YouTube video is this one, which is most likely over half an hour long, and then maybe the almighty algorithm will take you to another video about motivation, and an hour later you'll find that your 5-minute break has turned into an hour-long break. It's okay, that happens to me all the time. So again, I like to have a bunch of time-specific rewards that I can give myself. It can be something like before my workday, maybe I can find a bunch of YouTube videos that are 5 minutes long, open them all up in different tabs, and know, okay, each 5-minute break I will watch a 5-minute YouTube video. Maybe I have a playlist. I've definitely done this in the past, a playlist of songs that are roughly around 5 minutes long, and with every 5-minute break, I'll listen to a song, maybe have a little dance party. Or in my case, because I do genuinely enjoy exercising, I'll do like a 5 to 10 minute exercise break. So technique number 2 is the modified version of the Pomodoro technique, my modified version, because I find that if I commit to working for 20 minutes, I'm not necessarily going to be doing my fastest work during that 20 minutes. I might just be like working, but that working will involve staring at my computer screen and maybe translating at half speed, because my mind will still be wandering other places and thinking, okay, just 15 more minutes of sitting here and thinking about working and occasionally typing something. Whereas what I do for my modified Pomodoro technique is, instead of setting a timer for 20 minutes, I instead give myself a goal of actual work accomplished. So in my case, I'm a translator, translate games. Usually for me, a full day's work will be about 12 to 1400 lines of dialogue for the game. So for my little block of work, maybe it'll be 100 lines of dialogue. Maybe it'll take me 10 minutes to do that. Maybe it'll take me a whole hour to do that. It really depends on like how difficult the dialogue is, how many words I have to look up, etc. But if it is achievement-based, on actual things accomplished rather than time-based on just time spent working on something, then that motivates me to get the work done faster, because then I can get to my break faster and listen to that earworm that's been in my head. Speaking of earworms, that's a perfect segue into technique number 3. Sometimes that's one of the things that's distracting me. I got this new song, like I heard this new song, I'm like, oh man, I love this song, and it's stuck in my head and I just want to listen to it a bunch. Sometimes that's my reward. I will reward myself by listening to that song or songs I love, and again, having a little dance break, little dance party, or exercising to it. Or if I didn't sleep very well the night before, I'll just like close my eyes and listen to it. Technique number 4 goes without saying, disable all the distracting websites and put your phone in another room. I just felt I'd repeat that again because it's really big. Technique number 5, make sure, like if this is a chronic issue for you, let's say you're kind of just putting in your time at a job you don't particularly love, or just putting in your time with a client you don't particularly like, a job you don't particularly like. And in the meantime, you have these other creative ideas brewing for other things that maybe you want to do, or other things that you want to do at the same time. It's really important to give yourself time every day, or at least once a week, to let your brain wander, let yourself embrace these creative ideas that you have, or these other things that you want to do. Make sure you're giving yourself enough time to watch Netflix. If you're distracted all the time and having a hard time focusing because there's this book you really want to read, make sure you give yourself time to read the book. If you're distracted because, there's this artistic thing you want to work on, maybe you want to write a novel, give yourself time to actually think about the novel, to actually brainstorm it, and to actually write it. You basically can't completely go against what it is that you really, really want to do. So you need to find a way to give yourself what you want while at the same time getting your work done. So the third challenge or problem that I have faced, and I'm sure you guys have faced it too, some of you guys reached out to me saying this was your problem with your goal of either becoming a translator or learning Japanese, or something in that vein, getting your degree, is a lack of confidence. Just thinking, that this is going to suck anyway, why should I do it? Full disclosure, another reason why this video took me a while to make, I did the bullet points, I thought up the video a while ago, but some of it was a lack of confidence. I'm like, why the hell am I making this video? Who the hell am I? I didn't publish any books. I'm not a self-help guru. I don't have like really super high production value on this channel. I want to do this right and have like a bunch of B-roll and music and like make it all fancy and stuff. Like my video would just be me talking into a camera about stuff. So that leads me into technique 1. If you're struggling with confidence, just resign yourself to sucking. Accept that you're not necessarily going to be great at the project, and I find it's kind of liberating to not even be like, well, maybe it'll be good, maybe it'll be bad, but that's not a bad thing, maybe it'll be good. I'd rather just embrace that and be like, you know what, I'm gonna make this video and it's gonna suck. I'm gonna write this novel, it's gonna suck. I'm gonna translate this game and it's gonna suck. I'm gonna sew this costume and it's gonna suck. Just resign yourself to sucking, because there's something actually quite liberating about that, just resigning yourself to sucking or failing. Because, let's be honest, you're not going to be perfect at it. This video is not perfect. My translating isn't perfect. None of my other projects are perfect. I can always improve. So yeah, go ahead and suck. And with that, if your goal, say, is let's bring up writing a novel again. Like if you really want to write that great American novel or a great Portuguese novel or whatever, just resign yourself to sucking, but also, maybe if you're stuck on like getting started on it, or if you kind of reached a wall, you've run into a wall in the middle of this project, write some really bad poems, or write a really dumb short story, like intentionally dumb. If you're a musician and you're struggling to write that perfect song, write a song that's just intentionally bad. Make a YouTube video that's just intentionally bad. And hopefully while you're making the bad music, the bad writing, the bad videos, you'll discover while you're doing that you're still having a lot of fun doing that. I hope that you're still having a lot of fun doing it. I hope that's the reason why you want to do these things anyway in the first place. Why you want to write that novel, why you want to write that song, why you want to translate that game is because you're passionate about it and you love doing it anyway. So you should also enjoy doing smaller scale versions of it really badly. And then it just gets you out of your head, it gets the jitters out. Once you've already failed at a smaller scale version of it, you're more comfortable with the prospect of failing at a larger scale version of it. So technique number 2 to combat confidence and perfectionism. This is gonna sound maybe a little crazy to some of you, but I'm a big fantasizer. I love like running through scenarios in my mind. I love running through stories in my mind, not even necessarily involving me. Like sometimes I like just imagining scenarios of things happening. I am a storyteller. I love thinking up stories, but I like thinking up stories of myself as well. I like thinking about alternative timelines of what my life would be like if I didn't make such a decision. It's a fun exercise, but let yourself indulge in a fantasy of a future where you were successful at doing that thing that you want to do. And, imagine maybe the gala events that you go to, imagine the people that you meet, imagine the conversations that you have, maybe imagine you reaping the rewards, like maybe your dream is to become a famous actress, imagine yourself having a nice dinner at a restaurant with your partner and you're feeling really secure in your finances and you're really proud of that movie that just came out. And really just imagine that and be specific, imagine the conversations you're going to be having, imagine what it is specifically that you accomplished. And that can be a really good exercise. Technique number 3 is to think back to times in your past when you have taken a leap and, tried something. And no doubt you have tried things in your life and you've probably succeeded at some of them and failed at others. And that just helps put everything in perspective. I can think back to the time in my life when I put my heart and soul into a dance piece. It was about choreography and it won, like it was formally adjudicated at the American College Dance Festival. It was, successful. I got my feelings out there. It was exactly what I wanted to show and it was lauded, very well. But then, I also think of a time where I was choreographing another dance piece and I really put my feelings out there. I was wanting to say something different and it was bashed and eventually removed from a concert. It was deemed not good enough for the concert and it was removed from the concert 3 weeks before the concert was going to happen. And this was after I put a lot of work into it, emotional and time. I was making costumes for it. I think back to these and I think back to the time that I was, successful and, a lot of good things came of that. Some good friendships, some good conversations, some good confidence boost. I like watching the dance on video. And then I think about the time that I failed and I think, you know what, that sucked when I failed. I felt terrible. I had a really, really bad week because a bunch of bad things happened to me that week, but I came back from it. I didn't die. I'm better for it now. So in either scenario, really the net result was good. So it really helps to just think back to other times that you have gone out on a limb and tried something, went for something, and noted that, hey, even when you were successful, even when you failed, you still came out the other end okay, and you will still come out the other end okay. Technique number 4 for confidence. This goes more for creative passions. Not necessarily though. I mean, if you're, trying to be a star athlete or something, is to put inspirational quotes from people you admire in your field or art or various things on display in your workspace, in your home, that you can look at that can remind you why you're striving for this goal, why you want to write that novel, why you want to write that song, why you want to get that grad degree. In my case, to remind myself why I became a translator in the first place, I'm looking at it right now actually. It's right over there. My favorite wall scroll from Sailor Moon. It's all 10 of them in pretty sort of, Grecian, I guess. I don't know, wraparound dresses and there's a moon behind them and it's really pretty. And that just reminds me, whenever I look at that, whenever I look at my amigurumi, it just reminds me of the love that I have for anime and stories and why I got into this in the first place. The next time I'm feeling frustrated about this boring game that I have to translate, because sometimes my games are boring, and maybe I'm frustrated that I don't think I'm doing this. Maybe it's a really good game or a good story. I'm I'm not doing it justice. I feel like I'm spinning my wheels and I'm a little too comfortable in this, and I don't know. I look at those pictures. I look at the wall scrolls. I look at the amigurumi, and I'm reminded, okay, this is why I started doing this in the first place, and these are the kind of people like me that I am doing this job for. And that gives me the motivation to get out of my head, not care if it's not going to be perfect, and keep going. So the next challenge or issue that I have this challenge issue sometimes, but from working at home for 20 years, it's not so much a challenge anymore, but it was at the start for me. And that is feeling too relaxed working at home. finding that separation of relaxing at home versus working at home. That's hard. If you don't have a separation, and you should have a separation, you'll always feel like you're working, or you'll always feel like you're relaxing. You'll kind of be in this limbo, not really sure if you're relaxing or working. So yeah, separation is important, but also finding a way to have that sort of professional environment at home. This is coming from somebody who works on her couch. So like I said, this has become just a rhythm for me right now after doing it for so many years. It's just kind of second nature for me at this point that I work at home and that's just my reality. It would feel weird at this point to go work at an office. But for the rest of us, and when I was just starting, these were the techniques that helped me focus working at home. So the first technique is to put yourself on a specific schedule when it's a work day, actually committing to starting working at 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. or whatever, set that time for yourself. If you're a night owl, don't force yourself to get up really early. Work with what you got. If you're a night owl, maybe your workday starts at 1 p.m. or something like that. But make it consistent. It's like, if it's a work day and these are my work days that I'm scheduling, this is when I start working, this is when I finish working. I think it's also very important to have a finish time, because if you don't have a finish time for your work day, that's when things can kind of start bleeding in there. You'll be like, oh, I can work for, another hour or so. And then before you know it, you're working right up to bedtime, which is not healthy. So yeah, even though you don't have to, work at 9 a.m. like a normal person, impose that false restriction on yourself. Set an alarm, get out of bed, and start working at a specific time and finish working at a specific time. Technique number 2 is to dress the way you would if you were going out to the office. So again, I don't do this. I work in sweats. I like not wearing a bra. I like just wearing sweatpants or leggings and a tank top and a sweatshirt if it's cold, and sprawling out on the couch. No makeup, no shoes, none of that. But I had found at the beginning that sometimes if I was kind of slobbed like that, I'd feel too relaxed to work. So it can help to, put on a nice button-down shirt, wear a little makeup if you're a makeup wearer. Present yourself nicely as if you were going to work, because then that'll help you feel that separation of like, okay, I'm working right now. I'm in work mode. I'm not wearing sweats. Technique 3 comes in 2 parts because it depends on what kind of person you are. So if you are like me, this first half of the technique does not work for you. But if you're not like me, this first half of the technique might work for you. So the first half of the technique number 3 is to set up a designated spot in your home. If it's a bedroom, that's even harder, and sometimes it's been a bedroom for me, but set up a designated space, corner, room, in your living space where you work, and that's all you do in that space is work. So this really goes back to having a healthy separation between working and relaxing. If you're sleeping in bed and also working in bed, whenever you're in bed, you're not really going to know, like, okay, am I relaxing or am I working? There's going to be a very blurred line. But if you always work, in the corner of your room in a desk, that's where you work. You don't do anything else there. You don't hang out. You don't play video games. You just work. And when you're in bed, or when you're on the other corner of the room in a particular chair, that's when you're relaxing. That's when you're checking Facebook. That's when you're reading. That's when you're playing video games. That helps keep a healthier separation. However, if you're like me, you get easily bored by the same place always being the same. What do I mean by that? I found that this room where I am recording right now, I originally intended for this to be my office. And this is where I do all my translating and nothing else, and it's sometimes a guest room. As I started YouTubing more though, and getting studio lights and stuff that take up a lot of space in the room, and also realizing that I felt kind of isolated and trapped and uncomfortable in this room working, translating. It just wasn't working for me, and it was very stale, always working in here. I liked kind of being able to see more things, being around my partner and my cats, and being closer to the kitchen and such. So I found that I actually prefer kind of rotating where I work. If I've been working on the couch for a few days, maybe that gets stale after a while, and I have to start working on the bed for a few days, and then that'll get stale, and then maybe I'll start working like in a chair, a very comfy chair. I can't work at a desk, by the way, incidentally. Like if I do work at a desk, I have to elevate my legs because I have poor circulation. I can't sit with my legs dangling. It's just very uncomfortable. My feet fall asleep. So I found personally for me, I have to have my legs elevated. So a bed or a couch or even the floor, like that kind of situation tends to work a lot better for me. But I'm weird. So technique number 4, if you have a really hard time focusing and working at home, is to go out in public somewhere to work. Go to a library, go to a coffee shop, go to the mall. I've even found, like for me, I get anxious around other people in social situations. So something like a library is okay because people are quiet and keep to themselves, but like a mall or a coffee shop, don't do well there because there's too many people and it's too noisy and there's too much stimuli. But for me, I've found like sometimes sitting out in my car actually is kind of a good place to work, because it's just so different. If I'm just feeling way too distracted and I just need something very, very different, my car for me. But yeah, if you're a person who's not socially anxious and is totally cool with being out in public around people, then yeah, like a coffee shop, a library, the mall, some other place in public can be a really good option for you. Especially if you're used to working in an office environment and having a bunch of people around, a nice, step down towards working at home can be something like a library or a coffee shop, because that way you can still be around other people. And technique number 5 is coworking. So coworking has been gaining some notoriety and popularity. Again, it doesn't really work for me very well because I'm very introverted. I like working all by myself. That's part of why I freelance, is because I really like working by myself. But if you're a people person, and sometimes I'm in the mood, if you're a people person, it can be very helpful if you have another friend who also freelances or who's also doing homework or whatever, some personal project. If you have that friend come over to your house and you guys hang out at your house and work together. Sometimes just having that accountability buddy there helps. And it also gives you someone to talk to occasionally if you're prone to feeling lonely. So this next issue and problem, challenge that I face that keeps me from being productive or motivated is that I just hate the task that I need to get done. I hate the task at hand. So I run into this sometimes with my job because not everything that I translate is a story that is particularly interesting. A lot of what I translate is otome games intended for teenagers and people in their early 20s. I probably would have genuinely liked them in my late teens and early 20s, if I'm being perfectly honest. I have to just kind of think back to that person I used to be and translate the game for that person. Because me right now, I'm an older, jaded person, and a lot of this like gushy romance stuff is like, I don't care. So sometimes I have to translate a game and a story that I'm just like, oh God, this is so dumb, I hate it. So how do you get through those patches? The first technique is what is called swallowing a frog. There's a little proverb that if you have this horrible, horrible thing that you have to do that you hate, and you just have to get it done, it's best to put that first on your schedule. So say I have, a couple days of translating an ultimate game that I hate, and then I have like 2 other projects that I like. I do the one that I hate first. Get it out of the way, because if you wait and put it off, then while you're doing the other projects, the other things that you don't mind doing or that you enjoy doing, you have this horrible thing that you hate doing like looming over you, like, oh man, I have to translate that stupid game after I'm done with this not stupid game. Sometimes it's like one little task, like sending in an email confronting somebody, or finally responding to an email that you didn't want to respond to, or maybe making a doctor's appointment, some very unpleasant task that you hate doing. It's best to swallow the frog and just do that first. Get it over with. The next technique, this is a fun one. Schedule everything like you would do for the challenge 1, where, you're stressed, so much stuff to do. Schedule everything, down to the minute of the day. And when you're writing out that schedule, put a lot of profanity in there. It's just so much more comforting sitting down to do a task when it's called, because, then it just makes me laugh when I see that item in my list, and then I swear at the computer, and it makes me happy. It's a nice release. The next technique is, if you're using that technique that I outlined before of, scheduling everything severely and maybe doing a sort of pomodoro technique where you're working for little short blocks and then taking little short breaks in between your works, it can be very helpful to listen to very angry or loud music in between each thing. Again, it works with the fact that you hate what you're doing, and it turns it into something fun. Along those lines, the next technique is I name the file of that project something like I'll just, put a bunch of profanity and things in the title of the file. Just make sure you change the name of the file back when you send it to your project manager. So the next challenge that I have to face sometimes as a freelance worker is if I'm facing problems with my physical health. People get sick. Sometimes I'll get a cold, or sometimes I'll just have a really, really bad night's sleep before, and I can't exactly control that. Like, I'll try to get back to sleep, doesn't work, I'm up. And now I feel like a zombie. So the first technique is, if you can, just take a sick day, take the day off. That's a really great advantage of being a freelancer. It's something I love about being a freelancer is I don't have to call in sick. I don't have to apologize. I don't have to find someone to cover my shift. I can just take a sick day if I need it. If I'm just feeling sick, I just don't work that day. Because I have tried to power through it before. I've looked at my schedule like, oh man, but I was gonna work today, I scheduled it, and I've tried to power through it before, and I gotta tell you, it's very unpleasant. It kind of prolongs the sickness, and then also, I'm just not as productive when I'm sick. You do not do your best work when you're sick. So it's really not worth it. It's worth it to just take that day off and work extra hard the days afterwards when you're well. Technique number 2, and this is more a preventative measure, but make sure that you are taking care of yourself. Make sure you're eating well, make sure you're exercising, and make sure that you're regularly getting enough sleep. And if you're not in a position where you can do all of those things, you really need to reevaluate your life and change things to make sure that you are in a position where you can eat well, sleep well, exercise. Because if you don't address that, if you constantly aren't getting enough sleep or aren't getting enough food or aren't exercising, something's gonna break at some point. You're like a car with that needs an oil change and also needs its tires filled with air and is also running low on gas. You're gonna break down if you don't address those issues. I know the grim reality is some people have to work 3 jobs just to stay afloat. Such is the economy. If you have the means, get a roommate, live with your parents, do whatever it takes to really take care of your health because it will catch up with you. Technique number 3, and again, I understand that a lot of people don't have the means to do this, myself included, because really high co-pays, but see a doctor if you can. If it's a chronic problem, if it's something that's persisting, if it's something that's, coming back and causing you problems, see a doctor if you can. In my case, I never used to have problems with my menstrual issues, but now I do sometimes. And I account for that now when I make my schedules. Basically, the first day or 2 of my cycle, I schedule those days off, just in case I'm having problems, so I don't have to worry about it. But if I had the means, if we had universal health care and my co-pays weren't ridiculously high on my private insurance, I would probably just see a doctor about it and maybe get some help. So if you can see a doctor, do. And with all of this in mind, the 4th technique for taking care of your physical health is to, when you are scheduling yourself, let's say I have a project that's due a month from now, I'll schedule myself to complete that project a few days, maybe even a week before it is due. That way, if I do get sick, I have some wiggle room. I can take a day off and, I won't have to then work like 12-hour days the next couple days after to make up for the fact that I took a day off. The next issue and challenge that I face that sometimes gets in the way of my productivity is mental and emotional health. Sometimes you just have a bad day. Something horrible happened to you, or you're remembering something horrible that happened to you, just not feeling it, but you have to work. Again, with the physical health, if you can take a mental health day, what it would be called, take it. It's worth it. To just stop. It is your brain's way of telling you, hey, you need to take some time off and address these, emotional and mental health problems that you're facing. Deal with that. I'm not talking about if you have, a chronic mental health problem, but just, a bad day here and there, emotionally or mentally. If you can, take a mental health day. If you can't, or if this is something that is persisting, maybe it's a rough patch, maybe you're going through something bad that's going to keep you not feeling your best for, a few weeks even, invite a friend or a significant other to be with you while you work if you can. Even if it's just maybe having that person on Skype and they're just kind of there in the background, that can can really help a lot. Sometimes if I'm having a bad day, I like to take my computer in bed, and my partner will be like asleep still, but he uses an eye mask and earplugs so he can sleep while I work. It's just really comforting sometimes just having him there, even if, you know, I'm not talking to him or anything, he's just there. Or, you know, maybe I'll drag my computer in bed with me and my cats will all kind of flock around me. Or yeah, co-working, like I mentioned before, having another friend come over and work with you or do homework with you or whatever, or maybe do some chores for you while you work if you have a really cool friend that way. That can really help too. And then third technique, if it's a chronic issue or if you're going through a rough patch and it's going to be tough for you for a few weeks or months or so. Friend David of mine, who talks a lot about mental health and, you know, depression and how it affects his art and everything, he said that what really works for him is to have something in the morning that's your very first step, that's like very easy, very mindless, very no-brainer, that's a habit that sets things in motion that will lead to the next thing, that will lead to the next thing, that will lead to the next thing. So for him, and I'm sure for most people, a hot shower works really well here. You roll out of bed, pretty easy from there to roll into a shower. All right, it's one of the easiest things that you can do if you're having a bad day, is to just roll out of bed, get in a shower. You don't have to get dressed. You don't have to think about what you're wearing. You don't have to, you know, do anything else active. You can just roll out of bed, go stand under some hot water for like 10 minutes. And then that leads to something else. It leads to drying off, which then leads to putting on clothes, which then leads to brushing teeth. And it helps build that momentum that then gets him into working. So always starting it with that one very easy to do activity that can then build into other things. You'll have to find what that is for you, but it might be something like showering, or it might be something like listening to a song that you really love. Or it might be, you know, if you're subscribed to a YouTube channel even, sometimes this has been the case for me, a daily vlogger or a channel that releases content every single day at the same time predictably, like Good Mythical Morning, whatever it is for you. Sometimes that can be a really great routine also, something that can start your day and then help you build on that. So the last challenge and issue that you might be facing, that I have definitely faced when working towards goals, and it's a very hard one to come to terms with, and that is if you discover that you actually don't want to accomplish this goal. So for my story here, I was in grad school, and the original reason that I went to grad school was one, I just kind of felt like it was expected of me, being a smart person, and two, I had this very specific plan that, oh, when I graduate with this master's degree, I can then teach at a junior college. You know, I could go on and get a PhD and teach at a four-year college, but I was more, you know, set my sights on, I can just work at a junior college part-time and I can earn $40K a year and I can have benefits. And that was kind of what was fed to me at the beginning of the early zeros when I was thinking about, okay, yeah, grad school, that's a pretty logical thing for me to do. And I'll get this degree in theater because I like theater, and I'll teach theater and dance classes at a JC, and, you know, that'll be pretty easy. It'll be an easy way to make a lot of money. You know, but I won't have to work too hard and I'll get benefits. But I realized after a few years in there, I don't like academia. I don't like the arts in academia. Like, if you over-academize, that's a word, the arts, I just don't like them anymore. And as a TA for a couple different professors, I TA'd for them because I really wanted to know what it's like to be a college teacher. I realized, you know what, this is not for me. Way too much work, not enough pay. Meanwhile, by the way, adjunct professors are getting screwed over. You know, that job just went into the toilet. They have a really raw deal. Adjunct professors, part-time professors, and full-time college professors. At your basic four-year college. Teachers in general really are just not getting a good deal in the United States. And I love teaching. I'm very passionate about teaching. That's partly why I do this channel, actually, is because I love teaching. But way too much work, not enough appreciation, and not nearly enough money for the work that I'm putting in. And like I said, I realized I'm just no longer passionate about theater and dance if it's in this context of college. And I had this realization after I'd pretty much finished all the coursework and was starting to research and write my thesis. I had the realization it took me a good year to finally come to terms with that and to decide to just quit. And that's the first technique, is quitting. It was like, best advice ever in a motivational video, just quit. Now, I'm not saying, hey, if you don't like it anymore, just quit. You might have heard the expression when you're setting a goal or a dream of yours, consider what is your why? That's the question you should be asking yourself. And it is why? Why am I striving towards this goal to begin with? What do I hope to accomplish? But more importantly, why do I feel this calling to do this thing that I'm doing? You're not necessarily trying to get rich or be successful, whatever that means, right? Your why in this thing that you're pursuing should hopefully also be because you had some kind of personal connection or passion to it. And I was discovering, well, my why to begin with wasn't entirely me. It was more that expectation externally of, oh, I'm a smart person, so I should go to grad school. Just this, or my parents both had master's degrees, so I should get one too. And my professors say I should go to grad school, so I should go to grad school. It wasn't really entirely me that was, coming up with this passion, going to grad school, getting a graduate degree. But the other part of my why was more me driven, and it was like, yes, I would like to be a college professor in dance and theater. But I discovered that why no longer existed because I had more information, things changed, situations changed, and I determined, hey, the reason why I'm doing this in the first place no longer exists. So there's no reason for me to continue doing it. Now you may think to yourself, and a lot of people have told me this too, it's like, wow, you were so close to getting that degree, why didn't you just finish it anyway? That is the sunk cost fallacy. So it's like, oh, you put in all this time and money into this thing, so to quit would be a waste of all of that time and money that you already spent on it. But I look at it this way, since I already know that it is a waste of time and money to pursue this thing, to invest more time and money into this thing would be a waste of more time and money. Either I waste the time and money that I already invested and more time and money, or I only waste the time and money that I already wasted, cut my losses and move on. So, sometimes it is really the best thing to quit. Unfortunately, you may not necessarily have the option of quitting. Maybe, your parents are letting you live with them as long as you're going to college. Maybe you've signed on to the military or something, like you can't just desert. Sometimes you do have to stick it out until the end. And if that's the case, I'm sorry. That sucks. Try all of the other techniques that I've mentioned before and power through it until you can move on to something else you want to do. So thank you for sitting through my incredibly long, sucky YouTube video on motivation. Now, above everything else, remember to take a step back, remember to breathe, don't take life too seriously, always try to enjoy the process just as much as the goal itself, and really get introspective. At the end of the day, true motivation has to come from within, not from a person on the internet telling you about it. But I hope that this video helped shed some light on yourself and got you really thinking about what it is that you specifically are having problems with and what you specifically can do to solve it. This video is already extremely long, so bye! Technique number 3. Oh yeah, so for me, think back. Oh, at some point I really need to, airplane. So the next challenge that I have to face sometimes being a freelance worker is a cat meowing outside my door.